if you were the Golden State Warriors and you have the 11th pick, would you be willing to trade the number 11 pick and one or two unprotected future first-round picks to the Memphis Grizzlies for the third pick this year?
Oh, I would do that in a heartbeat.
You would do that in a heartbeat.
That would make me, and you're going to go, you dummy, that would make me feel like last Sunday went better than Sunday, but the lottery went better than it actually did, but we had to pay for the feel good.
All right. So if you're the Memphis Grizzlies, what are you taking for the third pick from the Warriors? Is that enough for you? You're going to move back 8 slots to get to 11, and then in 2 years you have the Warriors unprotected, and then in 4 years you have the Warriors unprotected. So you get 3 first-round picks from the Warriors, and the Warriors get to snag whoever, Caleb Wilson or Boozer or Peterson or DeBanza, even though I don't think he'll fall all the way to 3. Is that something?
Would you be interested in Jimmy Butler's expiring contract? Can I throw in Draymond's contract as well if you don't, rip it up and add some years to it? Like, that's where I would start.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you were to make a trade like this with Memphis, you wouldn't have to include any players. It could just be, draft
So you're asking
picks.
what I want from them outside of the 3 pick.
Well, I don't know that you would have to give them a player or you would have to get a player in that situation. If you're the Warriors, you're probably calling the top 3 or 4 teams saying, what would you want in addition to our 11 for us to move up? I don't know. The problem, and I'm with you, is I don't see one player on the Warriors that would be a good enough player to make Memphis want to do that. They're not going to get Curry. They don't want Butler because cap space doesn't mean anything to a team that's just been voted the least liked city in the league.
That part.
Like, no, they're not going to be able to sign free agents in Memphis, so I don't think they want Butler. So
no interest in Pods or Moody? Injured Moody? I know.
I don't think they're substantial enough for the Grizzlies to want to move back. That's just me.
Because they're looking for their next job. He will not be in a Memphis uniform. And if you hold on to the pick, now I was warming up, Stoney, but I'm like, Memphis ain't going for that. That would be almost suicide not to take your version and maybe even a better version of Ja Morant with one of these 3, with a top 3 pick, whoever's left.
Yeah. 888-957-9570 is the number. We're going to get into some of this Steve Kerr sound. And the first thing I want to start with is just on his process of why he was almost done and he decided to come back. This is from after the press conference. So we haven't even talked about this because Steve Kerr was on with Willard and Dibbs. But how do you go from almost being done on a Tuesday to thinking you want to come back on a Thursday after you beat the Clippers?
In a lot of ways, it did feel like it was coming to a close, just based on how the season was going and the transition that we have ahead of us. And I didn't know what was going to happen, and I just wanted to make sure I enjoyed everything and soaked it all in. So it was tricky. That day was tricky. It ended in a great way. 2 days later, we lose to Phoenix, and we're done, and all of a sudden we're faced with, this decision. And what I'm most proud of is that organizationally we really had an unbelievably productive and mature process to all this to really decide, what was the best thing for the team, for the organization. And it worked out. I mean, this could have gone either way. And in the end, we agreed the partnership should continue and we'll keep this thing going. And I'm really excited about that.
What if I told you that I don't think there's any guarantees that he makes it through his 2 years? Would you think that's crazy?
I would, yeah. I would bet that right now.
Yeah. I think I would bet that he won't make it 2 years.
And that's because of the 15th round, if you want to call it that, boxing shout out Ronda Rousey, on how long it took. But now, once we hear and read this article by Wright Thompson, at the end of the day, it was always up to Steve.
I'm not sure I believe that either, to be honest with you. I'm not sure I believe it was all Steve Kerr's decision. But here's the other thing I believe, that if Steve Kerr at the end of the season is 95% sure he's gone, and then, something changes late in the season. Okay, so now they start talking. Kerr's got to convince Lacob that, Joe Lacob had to know without talking to him that Kerr was contemplating leaving. So now Kerr comes back and says, you know what, I've given it a lot of time. I'll take a 2-year deal. Well, at that point, what's Joe Lacob going to do? He has to give it to him. Even if Joe Lacob wanted to make a coaching change, there is no way that he knew that he could take that hit. He couldn't take that hit.
What, PR hit, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, well.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll say this to that. Let's put the right on the table on this Monday morning, brought to you by Echo Pest Control. Stoney, no matter who was coaching this team, that's the smallest of their problems. It could have been Jesus coaching this team. Not going to bring Jimmy and Moody back any faster. Steph's new normal. Draymond, they got major issues. So if I'm Joe Lacob, all right, Kerr, come back. Because if I had a new coach, unless he's got a magic wand and some HGH and can sprinkle health on my team, we're still kind of screwed.
And I could take the opposite view, saying if the coach isn't going to be able to really make a meaningful difference on this team, then why would you marry somebody who's the highest paid coach in the league, keep him the highest paid coach in the league? And again, I'm asking, what are you getting out of having Steve Kerr here for the next 2 years?
I would say you hit it on the head with the PR then. It was about that part of it.
Yeah, I think
cosmetic.
I think that had something to do with it. I mean, could you imagine if Steve Kerr at the end of this process said, no, I was hoping to come back after all was said and done.
That would have been bad.
And Joe Lacob said, you know what, we're going in a different direction. So
fan base would have been split or more than,
Well, this is where and it's kind of semantics, but when people say it was all Kerr's decision, I don't think it was. I really don't. I think in the end, obviously, it was Joe Lacob's decision, but he was never going to pull the plug on Steve Kerr if Steve expressed any interest in remaining with this team. He couldn't have done that. And so that's why sure, they sound great right now, and they'll go on for the next 2 years and say, we're going to run it back, but we'll try to make some changes, and we're going to clean up the turnovers and this, that, and the other thing. But I'm not convinced that everything is completely fine and will be fine. I'm just not.
Well, let me ask you this before we go to break. If you're right, and that had a big part to do with Steve Kerr coming back, does that extend to Draymond? Because if you're right, then Draymond will get this thing ripped up in hell multiple years because of the cosmetic part of it? Or do you think Kerr and Dre are different in regard to if they were to say bye-bye to Dre, it wouldn't hit or have the impact PR-wise that Kerr would?
Well, here's the thing that we also have to talk about. Mike Dunleavy, I don't believe has any interest, zero, nada, none, in giving Draymond Green an extra year.
But what if Lacob does?
Well, that's the point. What if Lacob does? So who's running the team?
Lacob.
Mike. Okay, well then get off Mike Dunleavy for if we understand that Draymond Green gets another year and he rips it up, it's what's Dunleavy supposed to do? All Dunleavy can say is, I'm ready to move on from Draymond, Joe, after this year, and if we could move on sooner, I'd be up for that too. Well, I don't know. I mean, the other thing about Dunleavy next year is, if the Warriors don't make the playoffs next year, and right now, I don't think they are a playoff team, the Warriors have missed the playoffs 3 of the first 4 years under Mike Dunleavy.
And next year's draft is not lit like this year's draft.
Right. And so now all of a sudden, Dunleavy's looking at a track record where he's made the playoffs 1 out of 4 years, and now the heat is going to get on him. But again, I get it. People can say he's the GM. He knew he could, but it's not that simple. It's not that simple. If Joe Lacob is telling Mike Dunleavy, get on the phone with Milwaukee, get on the phone with this, that, and the other, and they can't get anything done, that's not Mike Dunleavy's fault. And if Mike Dunleavy wants to go in another direction, then you can't prevent him to go in another direction if he's your GM and that's why you hired him.